Good morning, everyone. I remember how people were sleeping in stairwells and breaking into empty buildings. They were crawling under bridges and crashing in the parks. Anywhere they could find out of sight refuge. On cold nights, someone would inevitably throw a rock through a storefront window and wait for the police to arrive to take them off to jail, where they would at least get a warm bed and a warm meal. Most of the people were suffering from mental health disorders of one sort or another, and well, they simply lacked the routine and the support, and sometimes the resources to procure and stabilize effective treatment. It was 2005, and homelessness in Green Bay was moving from being an issue to really becoming a problem in the community. We had been on the streets with Streetlights Outreach for about a year at that point, and we had become quite familiar with all the realities involved. We had spoken with police officers who patrolled the nights. We had conversations with social workers at the crisis center, and we spent time listening to the night clerks at convenience stores. And everyone with visibility knew this was a growing problem, but no one had a solution. So we kept talking about it, we kept exploring, we kept being open, and finally we connected with Father Guy Blair at St. John the Evangelist Parish and opened an emergency shelter that has since then grown to become St. John's Ministries. In my mind at the time, we were simply following the gospel mandates to tend my sheep and to love your neighbor as yourself. And I recall feeling kind of good at the time about addressing a very real issue in the community and helping people who really were on the margins and needed help, and doing it all through volunteers and private support without any burden on taxpayers or government programs and resources. To my surprise, however, not everyone agreed. It wasn't long before objections roiled. People were angry. They were upset, and we got letters and comments chastising us for daring to help those bums. That's the phrase people would use, to help those bums. And I was particularly surprised to learn that some of the loudest and harshest critics were among my own fellow Christians and people who professed to follow the same gospel I did. How could this be? It didn't make sense to me. Now, when I read the passage from Luke where Jesus says his coming will divide households and families, I understand it in this context. Jesus was obviously wise. He was an insightful person. He understood human nature. He knew that not everyone, even among the Pharisees, even among the church-going faithful of today, not everyone wants to follow the teacher's teaching. Not everyone wants to be merciful peacemakers. Not everyone wants to feed the hungry, and not everyone wants to love their neighbors. Admittedly, it's very hard for all of us sometimes. His message is indeed controversial, and it forces us to confront some truths about ourselves. Unless we truly have our own personal spiritual house in order, Christ's message even divides us within ourselves. Our hearts yearn to be compassionate, but our heads tend to be judgmental. Our souls hunger for communion and harmony, but our egos beg for individualism and personal elevation. If we are honest with ourselves about our faith, Christ forces us to confront our own inner dissonance and hypocrisy. It's so much easier to project our inner conflict outward onto others than to wrestle with it and reconcile it within ourselves. When Jesus greets his disciples, he says, "Peace be with you." But peace, of course, is only possible if we are living harmoniously within ourselves, if our heart and our heads and our souls are aligned. If we are divided internally, all our relationships will be divided. If we struggle with inner conflict, all our relationships are going to struggle with conflict. We will just continue to project that inner dissonance outward onto others and our relationships. This seems to be the primary spiritual call of the gospel, not necessarily to change the divided world out there, but first and foremost, to change the divided world within. May the united wholeness of Christ rain down upon you. May the united wholeness of Christ stir the heart within you. And may the united wholeness of Christ flow forth then from you. Peace be with you.